Ladies and gentlemen, a new version of Minecraft has been released. This is version 1.5 of the Bedrock version of the game. If you don't know what that is the version of the game that you can get from the Windows 10 store on Xbox One, on the Nintendo Switch, and on all mobile devices. This is the version with crossplay support, the one that was once called the Better Together update. Like I said, this is version 1.5 and it represents the second stage of the update Aquatic, bringing the rest of the missing features and fixes for that version on to the Bedrock edition. My name is slicedlime. I'm here to take you on a comprehensive look on all of the new things in this version. Let me prefix this by saying that there are also a large number of bug fixes in this version, so many that I can't really list them all in this video. There's a full change list on the feedback.minecraft.net page, and I will link it in the video description if you want to read all of the gory details. This video will show all of the most important changes in this version, including some of the most relevant bug fixes. This actually released a number of days ago. I've been ill and unable to make a video until now, so thank you for your patience and let's get into the changes. We're gonna start with a look on hostile mobs. Undead mobs have changed their behaviors. They will now sink in water instead of bobbing on the surface, and they will walk around on the bottom instead. And once they have sunk, they can also drown. Husks that have sunk in water will now drown and transform into zombies. And zombies that drown will transform into a new mob called the Drowned. The Drowned are underwater zombies that lurk in deep and dark waters. They can also spawn on the bottom of the ocean. They don't have to transform from normal zombies. At night they can come up to the shore as well, but if they're on land they will burn like regular zombies do. They can also spawn holding Tritons, and if you kill them they can drop an item called a Nautilus shell, and we will get into that more later when we talk about blocks and items. More water changes for undead mobs. Skeletons and strays, if they get into the water, they will switch from ranged attacks to melee attacks while they're underwater, and then if they get out of water, they will switch back to ranged attacks. And also a fix for skeletons: arrows that were fired by skeletons could be picked up by players in the previous version, and they can't in this version. That bug has been fixed. Some of the random bits and bobs concerning hostile mobs. The Ender Dragon could get stuck if you moved too far away. That's fixed in this version, so you can't cheese the dragon like that anymore. Silverfish couldn't enter stone blocks, and they can now again. And some fixes regarding spawning. Guardians will now spawn in valid water source blocks again, and there was a bug that meant that two Elder Guardians could spawn on top of each other in a chamber in the Ocean Monument. That's fixed in this version. In the change to spawning, mobs will no longer spawn on top of redstone components. There are changes to passive mobs in this version as well. Skeleton horses can now be ridden underwater. Because they are undead, they will sink like normal mobs, but as opposed to other horses, you can ride them around underwater. But that's not the biggest change to the oceans in this version. Sea turtles can be found swimming in the oceans and tanning on the beaches. They lay eggs on said beaches, and once laid, the eggs will progress through 3 stages before hatching. And when they hatch, baby turtles will come out and crawl towards the nearest ocean. Do take care though, the eggs are fragile and can break when stepped upon. And that's a favorite pastime of zombies, so make sure you keep the zombies away from those fragile eggs. Fish mobs in the ocean have also had some fixes. Their collision size have been increased, so interacting with them should work better in this version. And dolphins have been given a new ability. You can now give them raw fish or raw salmon, and they will swim towards the nearest ocean ruin or shipwreck and help you find that hidden treasure. And also for dolphins, if they get stranded on land, you can help them by splashing water with a splash water bottle to help keep them hydrated on the land now. Let's move into talking about blocks and items, and we're going to continue on the track of turtles. There's a new item called a scute. That is a shell piece from a turtle, and you don't get them by killing turtles, so don't even think about it. You get them when a turtle grows up from being a baby to being an adult, so walk the beaches and pick these up. Once you have enough, you can use them to craft a turtle shell, and that can act as a helmet which gives you an extended breath underwater. Or it can also be used to brew. It can be brewed into a new potion called Potion of the Turtle Master. The first level of this potion gives you slowness 4, but it also gives you resistance 3 for 20 seconds. It can be extended to 40 seconds, or it can be powered into level 2, which gives slowness 6. and resistance 4. There's a new block underwater as well. It's not one that you place, but it's one that's created. It's the bubble column, and it's created by placing magma blocks or soul sand blocks underwater. These both create bubble columns, but they are different. Magma blocks create downward flowing columns where items and entities will sink in it, and soul sand creates upward flowing bubbles that will propel items and entities upwards. We talked about the Nautilus shell before. You can get them from fishing or from killing the drowned that hold them. And they can be used together with the Heart of the Sea item added in the previous version. Just surround one Heart of the Sea with a Nautilus shell to create a Conduit. Conduit is a beacon-like block, and you can place it underwater and then build rings out of certain blocks. They are the prismarine blocks, and the more blocks you have in these rings, the more powerful the conduit will become. Once you have enough blocks, it will activate and grant you conduit power when you are nearby. That increases underwater visibility and mining speed, and also prevents you from drowning. The more blocks you have in the rings, the bigger the radius that the conduit can reach. Also, if you have enough power in the rings, then it will also start hunting for mobs inside of its range, dealing damage to that mob. Other changes to underwater things in this version. Coral blocks will no longer die. As long as one side is touching water, they no longer need water on all sides, one is sufficient. And speaking of corals, coral fan hitboxes have been improved, and the time it takes to break coral fans in survival mode has been decreased. Tritons no longer break blocks in creative mode, and also Tritons can now be enchanted with more things. They can now have mending and also unbreaking. If you have the Riptide enchant on a Trident, then the texture of that effect has been improved, and there's a new animation for using it in the first person perspective. You can once again eat raw fish as well, and the friction of the new blue ice blocks from the previous version have been decreased slightly. Let's talk about world generation changes. In the previous version there was a bug that meant that overhangs and floating islands would cause grass and snow to disappear underneath. That's fixed in this version, so you'll now have properly beautiful overhangs and floating islands over your world again. Also, Bryce Mesa biomes didn't generate correctly, and they do in this version. Tall birch trees will now again generate in mutated birch forests, and water flows inconsistent and suspended around caves and ravines in the previous version, and that's fixed in this one. Let's talk about other gameplay changes. If you try to enter a minecart from another minecart, that was kind of glitchy and sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. In this version it will properly work all the time. Steering of boats have been changed. If you're using a keyboard and mouse, you can now steer more like Java Edition, where you press W to move forwards and S to reverse instead of the side steering that you used before. Also, for boats, passengers are no longer immune to falling damage when the boat falls from a high place, and baby animals can now be put into boats without taking suffocation damage. If you don't have a boat, you'll have to swim, and that's been improved as well. Player swimming at the surface of the water has been improved, and you'll no longer gradually drift up or down when you're swimming straight ahead. Sneaking and jumping into water also no longer prevents you from jumping or swimming upwards. Another underwater fix is that TNT exploding underwater no longer deals damage to players or other entities, just like in Java Edition, and blocks that were removed underwater didn't create a source water block, and that is fixed in this version. If you dropped items into water, there were also a number of problems with that. Items will no longer get stuck in flowing water source blocks, and dropped items can no longer float against the water current. And finally, dropped items can now once again pass under top slabs. Experience orbs didn't get picked up properly always in the previous version. If you've had that problem, you should be fine in this version. Experience orbs will now always get picked up by a player. And also, pick block, the function of the middle mouse button normally if you're playing with a keyboard and mouse. That function now works in survival mode as well. Another change brought over from Java Edition. Bunch of fixes for enchantments. The protection enchantment didn't work against many types of damage in the previous version, and now it's been fixed to once again protect players from all types of damage. The damage given while standing in the lava when you have armor with fire protection and protection enchantments equipped is now reduced again, and the fire resistance once again protects you from blaze ranged attacks. Speaking of enchantment, enchantment names used to be obscured in the enchantment table if you're using the pocket user interface, and that's fixed in this version. Another fix, Woodland Explorer maps once again point out woodland mentions correctly. And let's round the gameplay section off by talking about a couple of fixes for creative mode. Flying speed is now consistent while you descend in creative mode, and blocks can once again be repeatedly placed when flying sideways in creative mode. A few changes for multiplayer in Realms, but boy are they important ones. If you don't have Xbox Live Gold memberships, you can now once again join and host LAN games on Xbox One, and Realms are now available for the Nintendo Switch. And also, if you do backup and restore on Realms, then resource and behavior packs are now properly enabled and disabled, and that also goes for replacing worlds. Number of visual fixes for this version and changes as well. The default field of view has been reduced from 70 to 60. If you don't know how that works, the effect of this is the amount of things that you can see has been reduced, but everything will look a little bit more detailed and closer to you. If you want to switch this back, you can adjust the setting inside of the video settings. Fixes in addition to that, rain no longer severely limits the view distance. Entities would sometimes glitch out, become invisible depending on the position of the player observing them, that's fixed in this version, and also double doors once again display correctly. Texture of the dark prismarine stairs has been fixed, and the water coloring now works properly in mutated biomes. Glass once again renders properly at further distances and at all angles, and all button items now display properly both in the hotbar and when placed in item frames. Ladders now render properly inside of water, and of course one more thing to mention is that the menu background is now themed for the update Aquatic. Some sound fixes as well. The update Aquatic sound effects didn't play on low memory devices, that works now in this version. Beacons now have sound effects. And the drinking sound no longer plays twice when drinking a potion or a milk bucket. New achievements and fixes to achievements in this version. There are new ones, one called 1 pickle, 2 pickle, C pickle 4 is for placing 4 sea pickles in a group. Echolocation is for feeding a dolphin fish to have it lead you to treasure. Do a barrel roll for using Riptide to give yourself a boost. And Moskströmen for activating a conduit. One fix as well, the Castaway achievement no longer unlocks before you complete the actual requirement. Let's talk about a few things for consoles. There were a number of issues with worlds not syncing properly between Xbox One consoles, and a huge number of world conversion fixes when upgrading worlds from the various Minecraft console editions. I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you had problems before converting a world from an earlier console version to Bedrock edition, it is definitely worth trying again with this version. Number of exploits have been fixed in this version as well. An exploit that allowed players to get infinite lava buckets have been fixed, and you could use furnaces to get unlimited items and XP. That's also been plugged shut. Also, ice placed on magma blocks could be used to get water into the nether, and that has been fixed in this version. Command fixes. The spread players command has been fixed and will no longer place entities or players at the top of the world to have them fall to their death. Coordinates of buried treasure are now accurate when you use the /locate command. You can now properly use set block to place ladders. They would turn into invisible blocks with collision before, and that's fixed in this version. And replacing or moving containers with commands no longer causes the items from the container to drop to the ground. There's a bug with command blocks that meant that you couldn't modify them when they were set to repeat and always active. That's fixed in this version. And there are a new set of commands that only work on worlds with the Education Edition enabled. They are /ability, /immutable world, and /world builder. If you want the details of those, please go check the official changelog. Couple of things to note for add-on resource and behavior pack makers. The templates have been updated and are available at minecraft.net/addons. And one big thing to note there is that humanoid mobs can now hold items in their offhand, and if you want an example of that, check out the drowned.json file. One change to note for the store, the inventory button has been moved to the top of the store page, so if you're wondering where that went, look up to the top of the page. And those were all of the major changes for Minecraft Bedrock Edition 1.5. Like I mentioned before, this has been released for a couple of days already now, so it should have rolled out to all platforms. If you want to upgrade, go into wherever you get upgrades normally on your device. That's usually your app store, or on some consoles it will be inside of the game details screen, and you should automatically be told that there's an update to get. And that was all from me for this time. I hope you enjoyed this update video, and I hope you enjoy Minecraft Bedrock Edition 1.5. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.